Hello and welcome to another Friday Afternoon Live. I'm Kevin Reid, the editor of Accountancy Age. It's lovely to have you join us again here, whether you're watching live on Periscope, watching live through your desktop, or watching through our web story archived later on in the day. However you're watching us, it's great to have you on board. Or maybe even YouTube, actually, I forgot about that. We're here in a kind of quite bright but breezy Piccadilly in the Comedy Pub today. It feels quite autumnal. A time of great change for us all, I think we can say, folks. I quite like autumn. Let's move well away from the philosophy. I think we've had enough of autumn's rain, I think, for throughout the summer, so hopefully, it will stay dry. Okay, so moving from philosophy and weather forecasts on to our order of proceedings for the next 5 minutes or so. We're going to talk about the upcoming ACCA AGM, where there are a number of quite controversial special resolutions that have been proposed for that. We've also seen Grant Thornton take up a new audit qualification. It's a joint deal between CIPFA and ICAS, so that's really interesting stuff. But let's take a step back and deal with the ACCA first. One of the ACCA members, a chap called Tony Thorne, along with some other members, have proposed a series of special resolutions that are going to be dealt with in the ACCA's AGM in probably about 2-3 weeks' time. And these are kind of quite controversial resolutions. They're all revolving around, I guess, from their point of view, trying to improve and change the ACCA's governance and their transparency. So if I just read some of the proposals out very quickly. So they want ACCA senior management to be subject to the same disciplinary processes as members. They want the executives to have kind of qualified and taken ACCA exams. There are some other issues at hand as well, including voting rights for executive pay and subscription model in terms of members having more say over that. So that's kind of quite interesting. There have been a number of issues that have driven this, but supposedly if you go into the ACCA's financial statements, you can actually find a £100,000 provision made for errors relating to audit qualifications being given out by mistake by the Institute. And apparently this has driven Tony Thorne and other members to kind of propose various changes to governance and transparency at the Institute. So I think this is kind of quite interesting. It's kind of trying to gain more power for the membership. What I would say is not the first time that we've seen this happen in terms of a spat between Institute members and the Institute itself, particularly around governance. We've seen big issues between CIMA and a council member, and then other CIMA members were involved in that process. We also saw ICA members put up a big fight in terms of blocking the ICAW CIPFA merger deal, which you might remember 10 years ago. It still feels as if it's yesterday, and I covered that in quite a lot of depth at the time. I think all these kind of things are interesting. What I would say is that you do feel with particularly sole practitioner members of the institutes that they wonder where the direction is of travel for the institutes themselves. You know, they pay their subscriptions, but then they're seeing their institutes use that money to invest in broadening their horizons, you know, setting up camp in different jurisdictions to try and increase the membership number. Institute members may say that they'd prefer to have that money spent more on them and improving the qualification. There's often a concern about dilution of qualification. We've seen lots of deals between institutes, and that kind of leads me on to the second topic. So Grant Thornton has signed up to cover a CIPFA and ICAS deal around a new audit qualification, and it's primarily an ICAS qualification with some CIPFA modules bolted on, and the idea behind this is to give Grant Thornton students a good mix of corporate and public sector background around the audit market. And obviously audit itself, you know, is corporate and public sector. There's a lot of mixing between these two sectors nowadays, and Grant Thornton obviously sees some value in taking on this new qualification for some of their students. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because for CIPFA, well, I guess the key point for the two institutes is that the students that pass the qualification can take up the designation of either of them and or. So, you know, you could have lots of Grant Thornton qualifieds now holding the CA and the CIPFA designations. That's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, CIPFA has struggled in recent years trying to kind of build up their membership base. You know, the public sector, in terms of how it accounts and manages its finances, has become much more private sector focused, I guess, in terms of how it actually manages that process. And I think CIPFA perhaps had a little bit of an existential crisis. So perhaps this deal with ICAS will help bring some more members through for them. It's also interesting because obviously you would have expected to see CIPFA doing this deal with the ICAW, but it doesn't seem to have panned out that way. The other interesting thing, of course, is this CIPFA giving away its qualification for free. You know, those Grant Thornton guys and girls are going to be taking four modules out of 15, and will be able to run the CIPFA designation afterwards. So lots and lots of questions about how the institutes run themselves, what their future plans are in terms of keeping their designations alive, and obviously these kind of things always rile up their members. So expect to see these two issues run, and we'll definitely be covering those on Accountancy Age. I don't know if we've had any questions, Cal, to broach. Okay, that's great. Well, thank you for watching our little 5-minute broadcast again. Join us next week for more fun and frolics. Keep an eye on the Accountancy Age website for follow-ups on both of these issues as well. And see you soon. Bye.